People do not hold on to the past because they want to suffer. They hold on to it because at one point it's what kept them safe. Memories become anchors. Pain becomes familiar. Identity forms around what happened instead of what's possible. Today we're diving into letting go of the past so you can make room for your future. Hello and welcome to the new Ashla Podcast. My name is Michael Perry, and today I'm joined by Justin Gates. So today we're diving into the power of letting go of the past. Now, we've made an episode in the past before about letting go, but that was much more of a broad topic when we covered it. But I think one of the most important ones, especially around the holiday season, is letting go of the past and the freedom that can allot us.
Yeah. No, 100%, dude. And it's a really hard thing to do. I will admit that right off the bat. This is not going to be easy. And just a warning. This episode might hurt some feelings, including mine. I don't know. We'll see. But we're going to talk about some really hard truths today.
Yeah. Well, and I think when it comes to stuff like this, this patience was the hardest lesson I had to learn when I was really studying hard underneath you. And the place where patience needed to happen the most, the place where I struggled with it the most, was in letting go. And it's one of those things where there are two key factors that come into letting go. One, how much are you still perpetuating what you're trying to let go of, whether you're chasing a bad relationship or you're stuck in a bad job. And then also, how much emotional debt have you accrued after getting out of that situation? Because both of those are important factors to the patience you're going to need to move through this process.
And in your opening, you're right. You're absolutely right. We don't do this because we like to suffer. No one likes to suffer. Especially not in this way, because it seems endless. But this is one of the most universally needed things for us to do, but it is emotionally difficult. It's physically difficult. It's spiritually difficult. Especially if your past is tied to some kind of theology or religious wounds or whatever. So this is one of those things that it grips us, and we have to fight hard to surrender and let go.
Yeah, this is why baggage follows people through their entire lives. You see a lot of these people who are older and bitter. I was listening to a podcast today about this sort of emotional scarring that happens to us, which is exactly what we're talking about here. You go through life, you go through hard times, you go through hard situations, you get screwed over. There's a list. But what this does is it slowly becomes scar tissue that builds up over time if not addressed. Mm-hmm. I heard this analogy in a book I read called Take the Stairs. Not that book is relevant to this conversation, but this analogy is perfect. Imagine a storm rolling by and you're trying to run from the storm. Mm-hmm. That is what most people do with trauma, with horrible situations, is they're running from that emotional pain. And so they're getting hit by that storm nonstop while the clouds just following them. Yeah. You got to be like a buffalo. And this is what this book referenced. Buffalo, when a storm comes, runs towards the storm because you got to move through it to avoid you let that storm follow you, it's going to follow you for hours. You run through the storm, it's going to be 30 minutes. Now, I wish letting go is as easy as a 30-minute process. Right. This is not a false promise that is how this is going to work.
It is a journey. It's just like healing. It's a journey. It's done in a series of moments, right? Yeah. And, this all stems from how we learned how to survive, right?
Yeah. Well, I think often, I know for me, one of the things that was so difficult for me is I went through so much chaos for years prior to what I was trying to let go of. And there was a part of me as I was going through healing, going through times of peace, healthy relationships, that the pain was what was familiar. Mm-hmm. And so I was fixated on keeping that burning to keep that familiarity, that safety that was chaos.
Yeah. It helped you anticipate that danger, those storms. By the way, if you haven't already, go back and listen to Become the Anchor, and that will help you with this too. This is the show right before this one. Yeah, or I guess it'd be right underneath it because they put, anyways. This stuff protected you though. All these memories, which we store in our bodies. We've talked about this 101 different times, but they all had purpose. And they still have, and they have a purpose now too. They are messengers. They are teachers if we let them be, right?
Yeah. Well, and I almost feel like they become masters of us if we don't let them become teachers.
Oh, they will. And not good ones either.
No. No. You will do all you can to avoid that emotional pain going through the same situation. And in doing so, ironically, the paradoxes of the universe, you will find yourself just falling into the same type of situation over and over again.
Well, when everything feels so unpredictable all the time, you have to create something to help you find some semblance of comfort, right?
Yep.
And that's what these old identities do. They give us structure. They help give us, I dare not say peace, because that's not peace, but they do give us the feeling of safety and protection, even though they don't serve you long term in those ways. Again, they become big M, master, not little m, master, which is a teacher or a mentor, right? Little m, master.
Yeah.
But they become that other kind. Yeah. But when these things, but as these things progress and as we don't try to integrate them, this stuff just starts to become so familiar that we don't want to let it go, because it becomes this pattern that we recognize in our bodies, in our nervous systems, in our minds, in our hearts, right?
Well, that's why we focus so much on shadow work, right? I mean, that's what the point of shadow work is.
Yeah. And then the brain, above all else, values the familiar over the unknown every time. This is why we have to always go against our brain sometimes to grow, to expand, to push out, because our brain's like, stop it. We're cool. We're good right here. I can predict this. But as we've talked about before, the longer you do that, the more everything shrinks in around you, and you have no room to move. And
So
this
true,
isn't
though.
this isn't something, you say to me, dude, let it go. It's not. This isn't something where I'm just like, okay, I choose to be happy now. That is the first step. That is a good first step, right? To say, you know what? Here's my line in the sand. I'm going to start being happy in a real way, in ways where I'm actually healing. But it's not just the whole process. It's a process. It's an unfolding, like everything else we talk about. It's hard because you talked about a storm a minute ago. It's hard because it feels like you're stepping out of that shelter, that fortress even maybe, that you built to weather the storm that never seemed to pass.
Well, and it's just, man, depending, again, those two factors, emotional debt is a real thing. And depending on the longer you avoided feeling this, the more you've gone through these situations, the more you've run from confronting yourself in these situations, the more that storm is going to be in size and length. I know for me, it's like a lot of my patterns, I never saw them as bad things. Most of the patterns I didn't see for what they were.
Right.
Being the hero. I always thought that was the noble thing to do, the right thing to do. And when I did it, I felt good. I would look for people to save, and I didn't consciously think that.
Right.
But it just, I would only see it, what I would see with my limited perspective is, hey, this is someone in need. Let me help you. Oh, we got a connection here. Let me help you more in being in a relationship with you.
Right.
And but until you step back and it's like, this is how I know how to get validated and loved. I am seeking these relationships. I am unconsciously attracted to these dynamics because this is how I've had my needs met, and my unconscious mind knows it.
Attracted and attached to, right?
Yeah.
And you're attracted and attached to things that just push you deeper into that struggle, that identity, because that's what forms around us, right? That's what happens to us. And we start to say things like, this is just who I am, or this is the story of my life.
Well, I think a really important point to what you're saying here, too, is often when we get into these dynamics, again, we have a relationship with two people in any relationship, who they are and who they are in our minds. And the minute that starts having differentiation, conflict appears in a relationship. And so often when we're in toxic dynamics, if we become aware of these patterns, if we start making changes in our lives to better ourselves, to prioritize ourselves, friction appears in the relationship, and it'll often hold us back. That's why number one's so important. Are you still in the situation that is something that needs let go of?
Yeah. But it's important to remember, these are just echoes. They're not definitions of who you are.
No, not at all.
They're more like memories trying to masquerade as your destiny, really, right? And the old tried and true axiom that has reared its head many times over the past several episodes is, if the ills of the world consume you, eventually they will destroy you. And that axiom really kind of ties in here, because when we cling to the past, we're just not remembering. We're not just holding on to something that doesn't exist anymore. We're literally carrying the weight of that forever until we decide to put it down. You know, the ills of our history, they really just come to our present. And this is why presence is so important over perfection. You're never going to perfectly heal. You're never going to perfectly let go, because there are attachments that are good for us. These are not, though, because they were something we did that served that purpose then, not because all we're doing now is just dragging around those old chains with us. Those old big, heavy, rusty chains.
Well, and again, when we don't have that awareness of this being a pattern instead of being a personality trait, right? Our identity forms around what has happened in the past instead of what's possible and what we can become.
Right. Yeah, it affects us, and it affects us across all time. Because really, as I've said before, the present is really the only place we have the most power. The most power over the past and the most power over the future. Now is where we make our choices for the future. The power we have over the past is to recognize that it's there, it happened, and work to let that go, to drop that weight. Because when these things kind of seep into the present, they just consume us. They consume our clarity and our peace.
Our emotions, our energy.
Yes, and they do hinder a good possible future that we're meant to step into. Because we're over here identifying with things that aren't meant for us. And letting go is not forgetting. We talk about this a lot with forgiveness, but letting go, you don't have to forget. You probably won't ever forget. But you can claim power over these things, because you can rewrite the story. You're the author. You're the author of your story.
You're not weak for holding on. You are human for trying to protect what once mattered. And whether that is some type of pain that was inflicted upon you, or something, a relationship or job that you cared about, or a situation in your life where you were on top of the world, being able to release that opens up the doors to building something new, to becoming something new. I mean, one of the greatest banes I see in the healing community that people go through, and it's totally understandable, is they go through an abusive relationship, or they get hurt really bad in some way, and that trauma becomes their identity. And when it becomes their identity, they don't allow themselves to become the one who healed, the one who is now building their dream life. They are the one who was injured and the one who was weak.
Even though it really had nothing to do with them at that time. It's just what they went through, you know? Weakness does not define us here with this. Ignorance, perhaps. Helplessness in a lot of ways. Because we rely on, when we're small, and when we have no real power outside of ourselves, we rely on people to care for us and make sure that we're taking, that we're safe. And that doesn't always happen. And that's not always malicious, as we always say. We're not blaming anybody. Some of you out there do have people you can blame, I'm sure. But we're talking about you. We're not talking about them. Because they will not release you of this burden that you're carrying. You must release that burden you're carrying.
Well, it's kind of like the trap hole of closure, right? Man, it's like, I know that was one of the hardest things that impacted me in letting go, was not having any closure. But I had to realize closure doesn't come from getting answers met or having that validation of what I went through. Closure came in the answers that I did have.
The things you did have power over.
And that I did know.
And that you did know.
I love it. I learned this term, and I can't believe I've never looked more into it, but I really want this to become a part of my value set, and that is operating from first principles.
What is that?
So first principles are where you dissect, because often emotions, which are good messengers, but emotions can cloud our judgment and our reality. And so first principles,
even the good ones
being
do.
able,
even the good ones,
yeah. And so we can dissect the emotions away and look at the true facts of something, the true details of it, the true outcomes of it, what we do know, that will give us the realist answer. What is that term? Occam's razor, right? Often the simplest answer is the correct one. Not always, but often.
No. There's always an exception to every rule. That's what's awesome about this universe of ours.
Yep.
It has its own rules that it breaks all the time. Not all the time, but Yeah, it breaks its own rules.
Look at all the paradoxes within this community. I want to do a whole episode on paradoxes. I love how many paradoxes there are within the healing scene.
Well, and it's not even just how many. I mean, because the universe is paradox.
Yeah.
But how many paradoxes do people run from or label as bad, you know?
Well, and I think, man, I could go on a tangent here, but when I remember as I was super Christian growing up and starting to sort of look at the world and starting asking questions, one of the biggest things I was always fascinated with was the fruit of Eden, you know, the knowledge of good and evil. Like, what did that really mean? And, like, as I've gotten into this, realizing that it's exactly that. Knowing and having that judgment of this is good or evil is exactly the crucifix that mankind has hung itself on.
Well, and beyond that, now that we know what good and evil are, when we know better, we must do better.
Yep.
And that makes life hard. Because now we have to take accountability. Now we have to have responsibility. Now we have to choose. Before that, it's probably pretty easy. You know, you just
and not judge. That's the other thing, man. It's like I catch myself all the time. Like I can't have an opinion on this because even though I see my side, it's who am I to say that this is good or evil? Like,
well, we have to use discernment here. Some things must be judged.
Yeah.
Some things must be judged, right?
Yes.
Hurting children, not good. I'm going to judge you for that.
Yeah.
Who you believe in, who your higher power is, I don't care. I'm not going to judge that. If it works for you, it works for you, because that's not for me to judge. But, you know, I know what you're trying to say. You know, these kind of superficial judgments aren't good for us because we often don't have enough information to make a good judgment, right?
Exactly. Someone gets angry at you at the supermarket or cuts you off in traffic. It's like, who the hell knows what those people are going through? Like,
yeah. Probably the same crappy stuff that we all have to go through, but which crappy thing is it, you know? And so here's why I was taught you not to judge in this way. It's because you would have to spend the rest of your day trying to ascertain the totality of the circumstances just to deal with one little inconvenience out of your day. It's totally not worth it, right? Yeah. It's just a waste of time, waste of energy, and it's just better to say, you know, hey, pal, thanks for cutting me off. But you probably shouldn't say anything because you should just get over it and move along. This is why I do the pause in real life.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just pausing.
Not punch the angry supermarket person in the face.
Yeah, you know. But no, I mean, that kind of judgment, it's not useful. If you want to judge, go ahead. But you're not gonna get anything out of it. You might stroke your ego a little bit, you know.
Yep.
Yeah, takes all kinds, man. You know, and if my rule of thumb is always kind of this: if what someone's doing isn't impeding on someone else's natural right to exist, if they're not hurting anyone, if whatever they're doing is consensual with people who can consent, right? Then what do I care? It doesn't affect me. But if I start pushing my judgments on them, then it will affect me because I put my nose in someone else's business where it wasn't needed, right? And so, you know, judgment's a very tricky thing because it's almost like justice. People have 1,001 different ways of seeing it, and they have all these different caveats to it, and it's just like you're just really overcomplicating this. You know, it really is simple. You know, I had a really old mentor tell me one time, the longer you go, the more you do this, the closer to quote unquote mastery you get, the more easy life becomes, but the more simple things are. You start to think more simply and less complex. Because as you said, things are usually the simple answer. It's usually the right one. So, but it takes us a lifetime to figure out that I was just thinking too much.
Yep.
You know, we start off as these grand philosophers, and then by the time we get to the end of it, it's just like, you know, I don't need to ask 1,000 questions to get to the answer anymore. And maybe that's a very human thing. you know?
I would say so, but it does kind of tie into the topic we're talking about here. You start letting go of these things.
Mm-hmm.
It's that whole wanting to control things. For people like us who are highly empathic, when we see someone suffering, we just want to grab them by the shirt, pull them out of it, be like, "Wake up! What are you doing?" And then help them see the light. But that is not our responsibility.
No, and it's something I taught you. I remember I told you, the more you get into this, the more we start to heal, and we start to empower you, and empower your empathy, and empower your sense of justice and family, and all of our agreements. You're going to want to run out there and save the world, but that is not our job.
Yeah, well, it's ironic you say that, because I'd say your teachings very much lean towards that. Like, that is
Right.
what you teach people. But for me, I suffer from hypermorality. That was one of my greatest cruxes in my adult life. And you have helped me gain clarity on learning to have that pause before I want to jump out and save the world. Because I was doing that everywhere, trying to save everyone I knew. And one of the hardest lessons I had to learn, that I have seen it through your teachings, is it helped me realize it is, when you save people from the consequences of their actions, especially if it's repeat offenses, if they don't get to learn those lessons, then they're going to have to learn it later and in a much harder way.
And now we come to another paradox. There are paradoxes in my teachings. There are paradoxes everywhere.
Yep.
Right? Because we teach this.
Balance.
Well, we teach balance, right? That's what we're trying to do. And that's why each person is unique in what they need, what they know, what they have, and what they where they need to be. So that's where that's right. This is where the law of confusion comes in, right?
Yeah.
Because some people, I must orient them more to the left, and some must help move to the right to find center. I'm just trying to find center, whoever it is in front of me, because some people are over here, some people are over here, some people are up here, down here. I'm just trying to help move them to the center, where these things start to become apparent. So yes, for some, the teachings may come across as, "Oh, this guy's training superheroes," and for others, someone might say, "This guy's trying to teach me to stop running into danger all the time," right? Or for some, this guy's trying to pull me out of the clouds to ground a little better.
Yeah.
So the paradoxes are there, but that's person to person, and this is how the Force touches us. This is how this light of creation touches us, because we are all somewhere on this grid, and the goal for everyone should be to move closer to balance, to center, to harmony. That's where we're going to find our best lives. But that's not the same for everyone, right? Because even I go off the grid a little bit here and a little bit there, and because I suffer from the human condition too. And it's tough being a human sometimes. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard.
So to the topic at hand, what is letting go? Or I guess better to start with, what isn't letting go?
Letting go is not forgetting. You should not give yourself amnesia, because what happened in your past has shaped you into the awesome human being you are right now. It taught you, it hurt you, yes, it scarred you for sure, but it also gave you that strength that you have yet to remember or maybe discover in yourself. So one of the things is, it's not forgetting. Those things
I think
happen.
so many people suffer from this.
Yes.
This was my coping mechanism for letting go. I didn't let go. I shoved things down. It would pop up. I distract. It pops up. I would get messed up. I would just do this mechanism until finally it wasn't poking me anymore. And it's like, okay, I'm over it.
Yeah.
Until something triggers it back up, and it's like, oh, wow, that demon is actually still the same size.
Yes. Yeah. And that moves us into the next one. You don't minimize what happened to you. You don't minimize the pain. You don't have to pretend. Don't pretend it wasn't bad, because it was.
People have it worse than me.
Yeah. Right. And whether that's true or not, your opinion in that is unnecessary. You should never compare. Right? You should never judge that, because it's not the incident or the act or the abuse that is the thing that triggers our hurt. It's how we took it. It's how we accepted it And that's different for every person too, right? I mean, so, for example, abuse is bad. Across the board, we can all judge that. We can all agree abuse is bad and abuse is horrible, right? But somebody not getting their needs met for a really long time can hurt just as bad, hurt just as much as what I'm saying, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So not minimizing what happened. We don't forget and we don't minimize. We face it. We face it with truth, one of our ethos. You don't need to pretend it wasn't that bad. Someone else has it worse, as you said. You don't have to, and you shouldn't downplay what happened to you, especially to make other people feel comfortable.
Right? Well, and this ties right back into that emotional debt, right? If you got a bill for 200%, that fucking hurt.
Yeah.
And you're saying, I got $30 there. I got 30%. That's how bad it was. Just a flesh wound.
Right. I was guilty of this a lot over the years as Heather and I, got to know each other better and better and better. And that's a lifetime thing too. There are things about her. We've been married for 25, almost 24 years. We've been together we were a year.
25.
So 25 years, and I'm still learning things about her. And it's not because I wasn't paying attention. It's just because this, like all things good in this world, is an unfolding, right? And I used to think that, oh man, this period of my life was bad, or this period of my life was bad. But then as her story unfolded more and more and more, I messed up a lot. And I would say, oh my God, I don't have it that bad. You had it way worse than me. And that's an opinion, and that's a judgment that is not... It doesn't help, because I can't sit with her if she doesn't feel like I can understand that she's in pain. I don't need to know or care about how much pain on, what scale of 1 to 10, how bad does it hurt? I don't need to know that. If she's in pain, I need to help her sit with it. But to connect with her and to have her be able to sit with me and me sit with her, I just need to acknowledge you had pain. And however much it hurt for you, that's all I need to know. That's good enough for me. If you say it was a 10, fine, it was a 10. I don't need to compare. I don't need to judge it, because that doesn't help either. And it doesn't help me to do that either. So another one, we talk about forgiveness a lot on this show, because forgiveness is a powerful, powerful phase of healing, right?
Yeah.
But we should never force it.
No.
Never force it.
Well, and I think so often it's just like I can just forgive them. Things can go back to normal. We can smooth things out. But forgiveness is never about verbally forgiving or saying, I'm going to just bygones be bygones. It is an energetic release. It is a shift within us.
Yes.
And forgiveness happens in its own time.
We're not talking about some guy bumping you at the grocery store. I can let that go right away immediately. You're forgiven. You're forgiven. We're not talking about that kind of stuff. We're talking about some pretty deep wounds here.
And it is important to forgive. Let's not just put that out there. Forgiveness is important. But it's also understanding that forgiveness is a lot of work.
It's a sacred act. It is one of the most sacred things you can do for your heart and for yourself. But you can't perform it. It can't be a performance, man. And if you force it, as in all things we talk about here, trying to force things and not letting things unfold, not letting things take the time that they actually need, that just opens those wounds even deeper sometimes. Probably all the time.
Another big one is pretending it did not affect you. It goes back to that minimization, but so often we try to be stoic, especially us men. My God, do we just try to act like nothing fazed us. And I remember the 7-year relationship I had that was really abusive is it got to a point where it no longer fazed me, and I was proud of that. I was like, oh, look at the calluses I've built. And I remember talking to my therapist at the time. They're like, look at what you just said. Do you think that's really a good thing? That you had to grow calluses to deal with the emotional abuse you're dealing with? And it's like, that's a good point. That's not being open to the world. That's you building defense mechanisms.
Yeah, we got to be honest. If we want to heal, we have to be honest. Brutally honest. We can still be compassionate to ourselves and respectful, but we got to be honest.
Yeah. So, what is letting go then?
Well, I would say one is, because we talk about building these identities around these things that aren't us, separating our identity from what those things are, separating our identity from what hurt us. that we are not the betrayal, we're not the abandonment, we're not the failure. We are simply the one who lived through those things.
Yeah. Often when we do go through things and we start to build these identities, we talk about masks all the time. And if you were to ask me before I started healing, like said that I had masks I wore in public, I would have been like, no chance, bro. No chance. But man, you really start to see these identities that truly form around our insecurities and our experiences.
Yeah. Yeah, we become those things over time. The show we did, the mask, the scariest masks are the ones we wear, or the ones we don't take off. Yep. I think that's what the title of that one was. Yeah, you become that identity. I mean, but what else are you going to do? Of course you're going to become that identity.
Keeps you safe.
Your brain's trying to protect you. That's what your brain does. It's a survival tool, right?
Yeah. Another big one is releasing the emotional control over your present. Because as you are wearing these masks, as you are running from your grief and the pain you've gone through, you are trying to manage everything within your present to not be triggered or impacted by different things that will hit on those nerves of the shadows you've been repressing.
Yeah, yeah. And this might be an obvious one to us, but maybe not so much for everyone else. That first step, like I said earlier, that first step, we have to start choosing to stop reliving what already ended, what's already done. We must take that radical accountability and that radical responsibility for ourselves, because I hate to tell you this, but nobody else can do this for you. You have to do it. You have to begin this path to healing by taking that first step to saying, you know what? My body stores this. I'm still feeling it because it remembers everything, even when I forget or I do all these other things that aren't letting go. But your soul knows what you were made for.
Well, I think an important note on this is
you were made for more than just replaying your suffering over and over again like a broken record.
I think one thing to tie into this is if you struggle with rumination, which is the persistent thoughts that you cannot manage, the key is to learn to, one, accept that you're dealing with this, but to start allotting a certain time to go through processing these traumas, these experiences. And as you start to allocate a specific time for it, it'll make room for it. Because sometimes it is harder than just saying, I'm not going to think about the past anymore. But don't let the past control you in the moment.
Well, that's why, the truth is so important here. Truth is. Because distortion is not real. It's an illusion. And you are meant for more. You are meant for more than just to sit here and suffer at someone else's, something someone else did to you. But it's at your expense if you allow it to be. But it's also important to remember that, this was a slow thing. This consumption was slow. And it slowly ate away at your peace and your hope and maybe your future if you're that deep into it. But this first step is the act of stepping out of what is eating away at you. But, it won't happen overnight again. I mean, this thing was a slow burn all the way to where we are right now. But don't discount everything that happened to you, because it made you strong. Look at all the stuff you've gone through. That's what I would say, right?
Yeah.
Stop for a second, pause, and look at all, if you want to look at the past and you want to use the past now, at least look at it and say, damn, I made it through all that. I'm still here. I made it through all that. And that, that could be your first step into, okay, now what can I do now to start healing and to have a future that doesn't look anything like that? But truth is really powerful here. You must admit, you must face the full impact without denying it, without distortion, without lying to yourself. The greatest lie ever told is the one we tell ourselves.
Yep. This ties into the next area I wanted to cover is, why do people stay in the past? And a lot of it is us denying the reality of our situations, the reality of our lives.
They don't do it because they want to, Michael.
Yeah.
I've never met somebody who suffered so badly saying, yeah, I like this. I want to do this. This is good. I've never met anybody like that.
Another one we talked about earlier is closure. A lot of people want that closure, so they hold on trying to re-script, rehash, figure out what had happened or why it happened.
We are puzzle solvers. We love problems. We love questions, and we love finding answers. We love answers more than questions, right?
Yeah.
I
remember.
It's a very human thing to desire for things to make sense. We must make everything make sense.
Yeah. I remember listening to an interview with Jordan Peterson, and he was talking about how if you have an event that is constantly recurring in your mind that is over 18 months old, what happened is there's alarm bells going off in your brain that never got to be silenced because there's holes in your maps of meaning, your maps of understanding. And yeah, like you said, we are puzzle solvers. And if we can't figure out what those gaps are, we stay stuck in that past moment trying to figure it out.
Well, yeah, because these wounds often happen because things end super abruptly or unjustly or unfairly, where there was no resolution, and there's a part of us that keeps waiting for that to happen. I'm waiting for my justice, right? I'm waiting for things to be fair. I'm waiting things to be resolved. So we replay those conversations and we reanalyze those moments and all of it. And then it's almost like, think of it like we go into these ruins, these ancient ruins, to try to find some evidence of what they were doing, right?
Yep.
And try to make sense of how they live their lives every day. Now that might, and it doesn't even work that well there. Like there's always questions. There's always like, well, we find these pots and we find these writings and we find these things, but we still argue about it 2,000 years later.
Yep.
Right? It certainly isn't going to work if you're going into the ruins of your past to find meaning from then. You have to create meaning now, because you are not the same person that was suffering that. You are not. Again, this goes back to identifying with. You are not that. You are you now, the badass who survived all these things. Now you get to be in charge. You get to have the power in the present moment to decide what happens now. What happens now is what will push us into the future. But you can't go into the ruins of your past to find something that isn't there. And closure, the people who hurt you are probably never ever going to give you closure. For a lot of people, they're not even alive anymore.
No.
You have to shut that book. You have to decide that story was complete. I'm now on to book 3 or book 4 or book whatever.
Yeah. Seriously, though, I know, and honestly, that reframing is one of the best things that can help you in that transition. Mm-hmm. I know for me, when I was going through it, I kept looking at everything as new chapters, new chapters. That's a theme I've had the last couple of years. And when I was finally moving into like the real, I'm getting better, I'm on the upslope, I'm finally getting my life together. It's like this wasn't the finishing of a chapter. I am finishing part 1 of my life, and I'm opening a new book.
Right. And this ties into waiting for the story to make sense. This is that waiting again, right? If I can understand it, I can control it. No, you can't. That's done. You can't control any of that anymore. You can only control what's happening in the present.
Yep.
Right? That's a fallacy. That is an illusion. That is a distortion of truth. And sometimes these things don't make sense and will never make sense because they came from someone else's wounds or someone else's pain or traumas.
Hurt people.
Yeah, well, they had nothing to do with you. You're not responsible for their pain. You're not responsible for their feelings or their, whatever, their hang-ups. We talked about this in the Anchor show. It's like, being the anchor is being able to sit with somebody, however that looks like, right? Whatever that person needs, without assimilating their problems and their wounds. Because if you start to assimilate those, then you're both in trouble. Someone needs to be there, right? To kind of steady the ship, as it were.
No.
But we hold on to the past because, again, we're trying to search for answers that aren't there. You're not going to find them there. That's not you anymore. You are you now.
Yeah. 100%. And as we brought up earlier, like the familiar pain of the past often is more comfortable than the unknown peace that you could have. I know for me, that was one of my big struggles, is you start getting into that peaceful life, the good life, and it feels so wrong, almost like you're waiting for the shoe to drop because chaos is what you're used to. And learning to adapt to your nervous system, because your nervous system does not know, your unconscious mind does not know good from bad. It just knows familiarity.
Right.
And so it will do all it can to chase familiarity. That's why people will leave good relationships and go after bad relationships. Why those are the ones that release the most hormones. They're chasing that excitement. When reality, it's their nervous systems are wired to want chaos.
It's a very simple equation. For many, suffering feels predictable. I can predict. I can put myself in a position to where I know this is the kind of suffering and pain that I'm going to have, because I've learned over the years that this plus this plus this equals this, and I would rather to steal a line from you, better the devil line, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So predictability over something that doesn't feel predictable or feels foreign to you, and peace is that thing that usually loses out here.
Yeah.
And like I said, and the nervous system will always choose the devil it knows over the paradise it can't see, or it can't stretch its perspective far enough to trust. Yet it will, if you give it that more consistently, right? You give yourself peace more often, that will become the predictable thing. I think, and there's another one here, I think that a lot of us suffer from, we're afraid of losing ourselves. Go back to identity. But we're afraid of letting go because we don't know who we are without it.
Yeah. Oh, there's so much truth to that. I mean, again, when your identity is built around, like I said, for people in the healing community that are stuck, so many of them are so identified with the wound instead of who they've become afterwards. And I think that's a normal part of healing, is you go through your pain, you process your trauma, especially when you go through something horrific, and you start to build the identity afterwards. But people get stuck in that area.
Well, here's a concept that people don't consider, and it's found in almost, probably, I won't say all because I don't know all things, but in almost every system, religion, philosophy, life path, whatever that I have come across in my life, and of course Ashla, when we release this, we feel like we're dying. It feels like death, even though it's actually rebirth. Every modern day system that we see out there, let's talk about the big ones. In Christianity, they talk about born again, right? But in the Ashla tradition, we say all endings are just beginnings. It's a circle. It's just constantly, right? And I have died many times. That's why I don't go to the past. I don't want to go visit my ghost, right? That's not me. Those versions of me that died were reborn again and again until you see me sitting in front of you right now. And this version of me will probably die at some point, and a new version will come out, right? So we run from the idea of death in all its forms. I mean, we run from it. We run from it because we're afraid that we're going to get lost. The spark that makes us us is going to get lost. I don't want to lose that. I want to hold on to that forever. Don't let it come out of my chest, Michael. It's always there.
Yeah.
No matter how deep in the dark you are, the light is still there. It is always there. It's always been there, and it will always be there. Always. And you're not gonna get lost. You're just gonna get reborn over and over again. And I'm not talking about, actually literally being reborn into a new body all the time. That's for another discussion. But I'm talking about the death of identity, because those identities can't grow without releasing and letting those old identities die and being reborn into a new you.
Well, and the sad truth is when we go through things in life, we will be reborn regardless. It's just how will we be reborn? Do we let go and rise, or do we allow that weight to sink us down lower?
And it's probably both. It's probably both for all of us. We have these hills and valleys, but just remember, the point of control, the only point of control you have is in the present. That's it. That's where it's at. You control the past, you control the future from the present, because you control the past by letting it go, and reconciling the idea that me is not there. I don't identify with that me anymore. The future is always in motion, so I better start making choices now to manifest that future that I really want, but not try to control it either, of course, because you can't.
Yeah. But hey, making smart decisions is important.
The most important thing you can do for your future is making decisions now.
Yep.
Right?
The greatest lie I think that a lot of people tell themselves is the tomorrow lie, right?
Mhm.
I tell you what, I was one of those people. I am going to do that tomorrow. I'm going to start changing those things tomorrow. I am going to go and I'm going to talk to that person tomorrow, and it'd be like, oh, wow, it's been like 2 weeks. Like, I'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah. And that goes against the jar of marbles, doesn't it, Michael?
Yeah.
Because we have to build trust by actually doing what we say we do. Most importantly, to ourselves.
Yep.
Because
Exactly.
the more we don't follow through with the things we promise ourselves, the harder it is to build that trust. And then eventually we have no self-trust, which gets us stuck in these cycles.
So what are the costs of not letting go?
A meteorite will fall from the sky and
Might be
smash
for
on
the rest of your life.
No, yeah, maybe. So this is where it gets real, and this is where it might get painful, because this is where we're gonna face some uncomfortable truths, right? This is not just some spiritual idea. There is a very real cost to carrying this past around with you, like a backpack full of stones, right?
Yep.
And most of us don't realize how much our future is being shaped by what we refuse to release and let go of. So the first thing is, and this is where I think most of us actually see the cost of it, is in our relationships, because it shapes the way we love, and it shapes the way we trust, and it shapes the way we fight and attach, and we start reacting to each other instead of responding, and we start reacting to each other as if you were the one that hurt me.
Yep.
Right? I'm just putting their ghost in your body now. You'll start seeing danger in your relationships when there isn't. It really produces a lot of this illusion. And even
you'll start projecting your past onto your partner or
exactly
on your friends.
On your friends, on every little thing about it. Right? You're always bracing for impact instead of realizing that you are in a stable, protected, loving relationship.
When it comes down to it, it's like when you're avoiding letting go, as I talked about, you're running from those shadows. You may feel like you got it figured out and that you're fine. But it's the minute one of those shadows gets bumped that you see that full demon like it had never left.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And it'll feel nastier because you tried to hide it for so long. It's the same size. It's the same stuff. Ironically, you are different, even if you're not completely healed, right? Or you haven't even begun really the hard work of healing. You still have changed. And now it's affecting you differently because you're kind of different than you were when it happened. And each time you stuff it away, and each time it comes back up, because it always does, the bill always comes due. It's going to be attacking a different version of you, and then you got to almost start over. So it's better to just start now. Face it as you are now, because at least you know who you are now, and not who you might be. But no matter how far into the future you go, it's going to come up if you don't deal with it.
Oh yeah. And that is the truth. Like that was one of the hardest realizations I had. The big thing that pushed me into healing. I was already going through intense loss, and literally all my past traumas that I hadn't seen in over a decade. I went through something that triggered all of them and made me have to confront that I have been running from a lot my whole life. And part of that is like when you go into actually letting go. It's grieving what you never had. It's grieving the person you were during those hard times. Mm-hmm. Often we do the best we can with the tools we had. And we can be so judgmental on ourselves or the people in our lives at the time.
But just like I told you, I want you to stop, and I want you to pause, and I want you to remember, and I want you to realize that you are stronger now than you were then because you made it through that. So now you can start from a place of power, not control, power.
Yeah, big difference.
Big difference. Big difference. Of course, it attacks your trust. It shrinks it. We talked about this already. But, when you've been betrayed or wounded, trust almost feels like a luxury that you can't afford. It almost seems like, oh, I can't afford to trust. Let me be clear. Trust is a God-given right. Your heart needs it. You need it. It's now you might be in deficit with this emotional this emotional, what'd you call it? Emotional debt.
Yeah.
But you have enough to pay it off. I promise. You just need to give yourself time. You can pay off these debts.
And as you go through it, the more you allow yourself to process this stuff, the more you allow yourself to stop running from the storm and confront it, the more this debt will slowly decrease. I like to think of it as a balloon, and you're letting the air out, and unfortunately, you can't let it all out at once. You got to slowly deflate the thing. And as you do, it pulls you out of hypervigilance, which is another huge issue you go through when you're running from these problems. You end up being on high alert and survival mode, constantly trying to manage the world around you in a way that keeps you safe. You know, fight, flight, freeze, fawn.
Yeah, where you can't relax because it doesn't feel right. Where you're suspicious of everything, including peace and stillness. And this is not who you are. This is not some personality trait. You just have some unprocessed things you need to deal with. But ultimately, it makes life hard. It makes life really hard. And it makes suffering worse.
Well, you never get the ability to fully live.
No.
You're always living in that bubble you're trying to create around yourself.
Instead of building bridges, you build prison.
Yep.
And look, it sounds like I'm just blaming you guys. Like I'm blaming me. Like I'm blaming her. I'm not blaming you. I told you this part was going to be a little rough. But this goes back to that radical accountability and that radical responsibility. We must take responsibility for this because I'm sorry. The people who did this to you or the circumstances or the situations, they're not going to get you out of this. They're not. I wish they would, but they won't. I wish I could just reach in and grab your heart and heal it. I can't. I can sit with you. I can show you what it looks like to be steady, right?
Yeah.
To have my sea legs on me, right? To be able to weather the storm, to show you that it's possible. But you have to do it. You have to do the work. And that's why this part's hard. That's why this, I hate saying it. I do. But it's the truth. And I'm not sure how else to say it without, creating some anxiety or some problems with you.
Yeah. Well, that's why this podcast is about truth.
I do it out of love, though. And the truth is because of love, right?
Yeah.
We have to acknowledge these things honestly if we are to heal. And we must develop integrity for this too. We must choose to stop abandoning ourselves to things that happened to us in the past. We must choose that. And we must re-choose that every damn day sometimes.
So how do we actually let go? What are the steps here?
Well, we have to grieve. First thing, we have to grieve. And we've talked about this in a few different episodes about grief, but grief is not just for people who died. You have to, and this is probably one of the most overlooked part of this process. You can't let go of something that you haven't mourned, that you haven't grieved over, because there is pain attached. There's love attached. You have to grieve the fact that you're never going to get that apology. You have to grieve the fact that there was love and care that you didn't receive. You must grieve that. You must grieve the fact that there's a childhood that you got that maybe you didn't deserve. You must grieve the fact that the closure that someone never gave you and probably never will give you, or maybe can't give you. You must grieve the fact, Michael, that the version of the story that you got wasn't one you hoped for.
Yeah. Or just the future you wanted wasn't something that is no longer your reality.
The future's always there. It's always being shaped by what we do now. A healed present becomes a healed future, right? We must acknowledge these things through grief. Grief is our best tool for acknowledging the things that hurt us, and grief is what moves us into that phase of forgiveness. But grief is the beginning of this liberation. It really is.
Well, you got to feel what you've avoided your whole life. You got to feel what you've been avoiding feeling, because when we run from our problems, when we run from our experiences, all we do is bottle it up. It's that debt.
Yeah. Because these things scare the shit out of us, dude.
Yeah.
Emotions can be scary. They can. Even the ones that are familiar, they can scare the crap out of us. And we will avoid sadness and anger and disappointment and shame. We will avoid all of the quote unquote bad emotions. But truth is emotion. They're messengers. They can be teachers. But letting go of this requires feeling them and listening to them truly and letting them get their message out so that you can move on from that. Thank you for the message. Okay, I'm getting the mail here. Okay, ooh, that sucks. All right, I understand. Thank you. And then you move on. You know, I know I make it sound really easy, but I'm just trying to illustrate how we must listen to these messages, because if we don't, they're just going to keep coming back.
Well, and in the end, it's like we can give ourselves our own closure.
Mm-hmm.
We can mend the stories that have happened to us. We can make it as we process the different emotions, the different from our memories. We can change this event from something that happened to us to something that happened for us.
Not only is it good for us, but we must, because it's almost impossible. It's rare, at least, that we get external closure. It took my grandmother dying. I was just talking to Heather about this the other day. It took my grandmother dying for my ex-wife to apologize for the things she did to me. And she messed me up pretty bad. Heather had to help fix a lot of damage that she did, right? And I was like, okay, thanks. Because I had already closed that chapter a long time ago, right? Yep. So, but that was rare. Most people don't get that kind of closure. The kind of closure Heather looks for, it's gone. It can't be claimed. A lot of those people aren't here anymore. Like on the earth, they're gone. So it's really rare to get that. So we must create that closure internally. We must. People move on. People disappear. People deny if they're still alive. They will minimize you. They forget. That's got to be the worst thing, right? Someone does something really horrible to you, and then you confront them, and they like, what are you talking about? Like they literally forgot, and you're like, oh hell no, right? Yep. But this internal closure sounds something like, I choose to stop waiting for them to fix what they broke, right? I choose. I accept that the past cannot be rewritten, that those ruins cannot be rebuilt.
Yep.
I release the role I played in trying to force a different ending. I've let go. I've stopped trying to control.
Yep. And as you do this, as you process this emotional debt, it will, think of it like the bank account, right? As you pay these debts, you get more energy that you can contribute to more new relationships, to yourself and who you're becoming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about releasing that emotional energy, releasing it from not just your memory here, but your memory here?
Well, it's like, again, discharging it from your nervous system. Your nervous system, when it's used to high alert, that is taking up so much of your bandwidth, of your ability to do things. And sadly, as you're processing it, it'll probably get a little worse. But the amount of energy you will have afterwards can be revitalizing.
Mm-hmm. And then you take that energy and all the rest of your energy, and you start redirecting that toward who you are becoming, right? We must choose the direction. We must choose. And again, in the moment, the present is where we have that power to choose new patterns, new ways of showing up, right? When you stop feeding the past, you can start to seed the future, right? Think of it that way. And again, letting go is not losing yourself. I promise you will not lose yourself. You are just starting to rediscover the person you were always meant to be. The more you get into this, it takes a lot of courage. It
really does, though.
And I'm proud of you. I'm really proud of you for taking it. And I'm proud of you guys too. You
got this.
But again, please offer yourself grace over all things. You're going to need it.
When it comes to embracing the future without dragging the past along behind it, you have to remember the future cannot hold the weight of old identities. That new peace requires space, and that new relationships require emotional availability. And so there is so many benefits to doing this work. You cannot become who you're meant to be while you're claiming to who you had to be.
Yeah.
And so just really keep that in mind as you start practicing this. Do you have any final thoughts you want to add before we go into the end parts?
Like in all things, letting go is not just a single thing, one and done. It is an unfolding. It is an everyday challenge, right? But the longer you get into it, the easier it gets. And they are a series of small, courageous choices that over time will loosen that grip, Here's what it feels like, though. You can feel yourself not negotiating with pain anymore, right? It's the moment you stop rehearsing and performing old tricks and old roles that as if they're still necessary today. It's the moment you choose who you are becoming or who you were forced to be, Right, we go here and here, back and forth. These things don't connect. They connect through you right now, in the middle, in the present. It's the only place you have power. But I don't want you to think that letting go because the past didn't matter. It does. You're letting go because you matter now. It's an act of self-respect. It's an act of truth. For us, it's an act of alignment with the light, with the force. And when you release the weight you were never meant to carry forever, you weren't meant to carry any of the weight, but you certainly aren't responsible for carrying it forever. You create space for that future that you were always meant to live. So my call to action today will be, I want you to write down one story from your past that you're ready to stop reliving. Not forcing you, you shouldn't force yourself when you're ready to stop. What story are you ready to close a chapter on? And when you discover that chapter, you can say to yourself, you can face it by saying, that chapter shaped me, but it no longer defines me. Yep. And as always, breathe. So good for you. But, really let today, the day you're hearing this, let this be the day you stop being loyal to a version of yourself that no longer exists. Because look what you've went through to be who you are today. And guess what? Your future self is waiting. It's waiting for you to make the choices now to get to that point. That's what I'll leave everybody with today.
Beautiful. For exercise today, I have two different exercises for people who are in two different spots on their journey. If you're someone who has gone through some traumatic incidents in life and you're trying to process through it, the first exercise is...
Are these secret exercises? Oh, he didn't even give me the exercises today, so I'm kind of hearing this for the first time too. Go ahead.
So get your journal out. And what you're going to do is you're going to just write about the event, the person, the incident, the job, whatever it is. Pour all your heart and emotion into it. Just get it all out on paper. Then, in a safe manner, take that paper and burn it ceremoniously. Do this repeatedly, not all in one night, but over the course of a couple weeks. Watch as you allow these emotions to be brought out on paper and then transmuted through the fire. This is something that really helped me release a lot of the emotional pressure. Now, if you're someone who is learning how to let go after having gone through stuff and shoving it down, if you're someone who is just entering the healing scene, is doing good in life and doesn't have the struggles of recent trauma, my exercise for you is to, as you're discovering what your insecurities are, what these moments of your past are, start allocating 3 times a week, just 30 minutes, to sit with those memories, to allow the emotions to come up. Don't judge them. Don't try to address or change them. Just allow them to come up. Allow yourself to start processing those things that have happened in the past. Your goal is to start feeling those emotions from the past. And as you do, allow yourself to start alchemizing them. Start learning how to change the story that has haunted you from being disempowered to empowered. From life happening to you to life happening for you. So those are my 2 exercises. For the affirmations today, I am allowed to outgrow what once defined me. The past does not get to narrate my future. I can release without invalidating what I survived. I am not abandoning my story. I am finishing a chapter or a book, depending on your situation. My future deserves a version...
Old guys have volumes at this point.
Yeah, right. My future deserves a version of me that is not burdened. And for our journaling prompts today, what am I truly afraid would disappear if I let go? Who would I be if this no longer shaped my identity? And what version of my future am I avoiding by staying here? Thank you so much for joining us today. Please check us out on our socials, YouTube, TikTok, Instagram,
Facebook,
Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you're listening to now, we're everywhere. So please give us a check out. Then also, please check out our website, newashla.com. With love and gratitude, Ad Lucem.
Ad Lucem.